When I was at university, protesting was practically part of our job description. Recently, Auckland University students have been staging protests on campus over racist posters and stickers denouncing mass migration and promoting a white supremacist group. Vice-Chancellor Stuart McCutcheon told Crackham, the University Students magazine, that while the group's posters were unfortunate, they were protected by free speech and would not be removed by the university. 2 weeks later, the racist stickers and posters still appeared, although they are quickly being removed by security and other students. Reporter Yulia Leilua heads to the student common room.
My name is Waimihia, Maniapoto-Love, studying Māori and politics.
Kia ora, my name's Kowhai Paewhenua, and I'm studying Fine Arts and Māori Studies.
Kia ora, my name's Karuoterangi Tuteao. I'm studying politics and criminology. I chose to protest because of the rise in white supremacist rhetoric we've been seeing on campuses and around the Western world, which I see as facilitating for what happened in Christchurch. I see white supremacy as much of a threat, if not more, than radical Muslim terrorism or any other form of terrorism. Especially
coming from like the protests at Hemara, I just had enough of people like takehiing on Indigenous people and just all minorities that just want to come to New Zealand to find a safe space, place especially at university where it's a place to, be educated but also feel safe. So yeah, I just want to stand up for that because it's just like enough's enough.
It's important for all generations to mobilise, not just ours, but I feel like in moving forward, ngā rai hike mai nei, we will be around the longest. We are the rangatahi, we are the leaders of our popo, the society of our popo, and we must fight for this in order for our people, our tamariki, to have the best possible future, a future that is safe, a future that upholds te tiriti o Waitangi, the partnership, the safety that we are entitled to, and to reclaim our tino rangatiratanga.
Oh, my nephew, tino rangatiratanga. Now, that's the driving force between one mum and daughter who have bonded over the protest lines. All over the country, there are families that stand together. Yulia and I went to Hamilton to meet educator Sharon Campbell, who's been protesting for the past 30 years, and her daughter, Dr. Mania Campbell-Seymour. I asked who inspires them and how effective have their actions been.
I'm Sharon Campbell and currently working as a resource teacher of learning behaviour.
Kia ora, ko Mania Campbell-Seymour hau. I'm a junior doctor working at Waikato Hospital.
There's been so many different things to protest, even in the recent...
TPPA, climate change. We've been to many protests here in Hamilton, and I go and pick up my tamariki from school or make them stay home, and we go.
The foreshore and seabed is probably my most memorable protest that I was a part of. I was attending Gisborne Girls High at the time.
Whakatane Council with Tameiti, grew up in Rautoki, and having a sit-in at the council offices around the new water system they put through and expecting us to pay thousands of dollars.
Where do you draw the line when it comes to protest action?
I think violence, is where we need to draw the line, and that we haven't actually seen in, especially in Ihumātao, the recent protests where it's being governed by rongo, and that in itself is a taonga tuku iho, so there's a whakapapa to that form of peaceful resistance.
Do you think when it comes to protests we're all getting a bit too nice?
I think we do need to push the envelope, and I'm I do not, even whatever forum I go to, I'm always talking about white privilege, white supremacy and terrorism. Millions of dollars. Yeah, look, we've got a white supremacy here, people. We've got a white supremacy. I just say it how it is. I think it's really important, and we have to be really strategic, which I learned from Tame, actually. About how you maintain the interest of the masses and influence the masses by educating them.
Oh, ka rawe. When we come back, we catch up with Hana and Hilda, Donna and Ken. No, it's not a rock band, but they have certainly rocked our world. In 1979, 11 Māori were convicted for assaulting a group of Auckland University engineering students. Despite the media framing it as a gang rampage, organisations like the New Zealand Māori Council and Māori Women's Welfare League rallied behind the group. Harawira and Hilda Halkyard-Harawira talked to reporter Mitch Harris about how it all began.
In 1979, I was part of the Auckland University students' kapa haka group there, and we wrote a letter to ask that they not, carry on with the haka, and that was in 1979.
Dan Mihaka, I will always remember, he said the role of protest is to force people to think, to challenge people to get outside of their box and look at what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Here we are at university learning all the Pākehā tools, and they say, the way you fight a Pākehā is that you go to get an education and use those weapons. They use the pen as a weapon to encourage them to change their ways. Well, we wrote a letter, they didn't listen, they didn't care, and they were quite arrogant about why should we listen to you? It's like just something we do, it's got nothing to do with you Maoris. 25
years of people writing letters, submissions, going to the police, going to the newly established Race Relations Office, going to the Vice-Chancellor, going to the Engineering Society, going everywhere. 25 years, nothing happened.
But on that particular day, I watched them and they just made me really hoha. And so, without even thinking about it, was just something that happened. I just went up and said, how dare you bastardise our culture? And I was really furious. I was shaking so hard. And then when my anger evaporated, I went really red. And when my anger evaporated, I'm thinking, oh my God, there's a guy with a patu over my head. And I'm thinking, oh, now how do I get out of this quick?
Hilda came back and told me about it the day before in 1979. I went and got some people together. We went up the next morning and stopped it in 3 minutes flat. So, and that's a classic example of you do what you have to do to get a result. Don't wait around for a whole generation and a whole forest to get cut down for trees to send submissions that are going to go nowhere. Deal with it when you can. Matt McCartan told me that Parliament is kind of like the highest plane of protest, because you get to a position where you are surrounded by the nation's media, and the things you say are instantly picked up and instantly distributed to the whole nation immediately. So he said, while you're in there, however long you're in there, take the opportunity to push the issues that matter most. So I tended to see my parliamentary career more as an opportunity to continue with Māori activism, and not to worry too much about Parliament. It's a bullshit Parliament.
Judge Blackwood, understanding the politics of that particular court case, sentenced 8 members of He Taua to periodic detention instead of imprisonment. The engineering students never performed the mock haka again. Now, Donna Awatere has been arrested 21 times during her life as a social justice campaigner. She was also the former ACT MP expelled from Parliament and convicted of fraud. But Donna Awatere was the iconic activist. She was brilliant, beautiful, articulate, fearless, branded public enemy #1 by Prime Minister Rob Muldoon. I caught up with Donna at Bridge Pa, where we talked about bolt cutters and drawing a line in the sand.
We looked at the Springbok tour coming up, and the 3 of us, Josie Keelan, Rebecca Evans and myself, made a conscious decision that we would assume the leadership of that movement, bring Māoridom in and bring the eyes of the Pākehā movement of liberal New Zealand onto our struggle, bring it home, and we did.
Was it you that issued the order to break the fence down at the Waikato game in 81?
What happened was I had the mic. Someone else was meant to do it, but they were too busy doing something else and they missed the point. And I realised if we do not go here, we're going to miss the point. So I'm looking, you know, as you do, you always look, who's going to do this? Then you think, well, I've got the megaphone, you know, and 10,000 others don't. So I went like this, bring the fence down. So, and everyone, all the bolt cutters, the front went like this, and all the bolt cutters, they all ran up and chopped. And I was behind, you know, directing people across the thing, you know. I was a child psychologist at this stage. It was sort of not part of the plan.
Where did you draw the line in terms of protest? Was there a line that you yourself would not cross?
We would never do anything to harm anyone personally, so we've also got good manners. So, you know, you treat police and others with respect, but that doesn't mean to say that I didn't break the law at times, you know. When you look at the result of it was that we transformed a nation. We transformed a nation. And the transformation was that we transformed Māoridom. That's who we transformed, not Pākehā. They just carried on.
Activism has been changed now with the advent of social media. How has that transformed the political landscape?
Extinction Rebellion is an international phenomenon, and those are social media. You know, even the Arab Spring that toppled governments was a phenomenon. So we're rolling with the times, and, you know, it's a good thing. Where it's not a good thing is where many people come to rely on it as reality. It's not real until you turn it off and march out that door. Participation is where the body goes, not just the eyeballs. That's the challenge.
What is your advice for today's activists?
Pick the issue that means most to your heart and to our people, that you judge is going to make the biggest difference for you as an individual. And then just do that. Once you make the decision, everything else is easy because people will feel it. They will feel your wairua. You will communicate that not only to Māoridom, but you will communicate it to Pākehā, and they will see in your body stance and the way you carry yourself, they will see that you have clicked onto another plane, into that beam of light that links your ancestors from the past into the future.
Ngai wie kia ko taira te moana nui a kiwa. Ngai wie kia ko taira te moana nui a kiwa. E ia ie whakarongo tautoko. E ia ie. Oh, that was the song. That was the song. She's so right, you know, keyboard warriors need to participate with their bodies, not just their eyeballs. That story was produced by Kirsty Babington. A longer interview with Donna Awatere is online. You must watch it. Now, Ken Mair is another warrior who has seen the inside of the paddy wagon on a couple of occasions. Ken was part of the 79-day occupation of Pākai Tore in Whanganui. Once he and others stormed the new studio at TV New Zealand to protest Te Karere being taken off air over the holidays. Reporter Kirsty Babington asked Ken about the impact of social media on activism.
What was very powerful from my point of view was the strength of social media.
Kia ora whānau, we're back down here at Fletcher Building.
The ability to bring a greater awareness, the comms, all those types of things. We never had that 25, 30 years ago, and I can assure you if we did have, I think it might have been an even better story.
How best to get the political leverage? Is it storming the barricades of old, or is it this new form of protest?
Well, I think they're one of the same, actually. I think there needs to be a groundswell. It needs to be very clear in regard to what we're fighting for around the values of us as a people. You know, the fortitude and the guts to say, we're going to do this and we are going to bring about change.
How do you create movement? Do we need some more leaders on the ground? Have we got enough leaders on the ground?
I've seen some of our young ones who really, really do motivate me in thinking, wow, they're articulate, they know the issues, but it's going to take a lot of guts. It's going to take a lot of planning to shift the mindsets, to shift the behaviours of this country, of this system, into the values of what our tupuna expected of us. My advice would be passionate, be confrontational, be committed, and have a vision.
A longer interview with Ken is online. But what has happened to the outer protests? Have we all become a bit too polite? Do we need to shake things up, shock people out of complacency and discomfort for there to be real change? After the break, I asked lawyer and activist Annette Sykes what's worked and what needs to happen. Welcome back. Tonight we're talking protest right up my alley. Now I'm joined by a champion from the streets and the courtrooms, Annette Sykes.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Annette. Hey, do we need disruption to get real change?
Well, we have to disrupt minds and hearts. So how we do that is a matter of tactic and strategy. And disruption is one of the best strategies to invoke immediate change. And so if we look at the examples that we've had in this program, what was effective in combating the fiscal envelope was protest. What was effective in highlighting the injustices to South Africa and the eco-racism that occurs in the current climate change movement was protest, but severe protest. Hard protest, because the state terrorism that was being affected in South Africa and some of the inaction now in the climate space requires real effort.
So, you know, we were both at law school together, and when we look about it, the law has broken our people. How do you fuse the two as an activist and a lawyer?
Got to understand law if you want to challenge the law, so that's the first thing. My grandmother inspired that in me. She wasn't allowed to study law. Ducks of Queen Vic, and then told that she couldn't enrol as a lawyer, mainly because she was a woman, and worked as a legal secretary in Dannevirke. So how do we change it? Well, we challenge that behaviour, for example, the patriarchy and the racism that denies the equal access of all people to a right education. But then we need to consider how that education is part of the maintenance of the status quo. And so kura kaupapa, mātauranga Māori, kaupapa Māori frameworks has been what I've devoted 40 years of my life to being developed in parallel to the Pākehā system, so that ultimately we can reclaim our systems of justice as legitimate options that are alternative to the mainstream that is actually oppressing our people.
So it's interesting that Donna, Awatere, Halkyard-Harawira, I think Ken and yourself, and many activists have considered standing for Parliament, which there must be a tension there between, okay, tino rangatiratanga here, and then going into that machinery. How do you work that one out?
I think my efforts to stand with the Mana Party was because the Māori Party had lost its way. I had I didn't expect to go to Parliament, but I wanted to change the government, and I wanted to promote socialist values that would challenge the neoliberalism of the National Party that Māori Party had unfortunately been carried along in the wave. So any forum is the forum to enable an education of hearts and minds. Parliament's one of those.
Do you think that we have more potential now to mobilise a broader church of kind of activism against these big ideologies that we're facing? Are there more Pākehā allies?
I think we've created a generation of wonderful leaders, the Pānia Newtons of the world. Are inspiring for me. I mean, Mahinarangi Baker's another woman that emerges for me. She's an intellect. She teaches at Te Wānanga o Raukawa, but her ecological challenges to her generation reverberate in all communities. So we have created generations that are inspired by our actions and are fearless. And that fearlessness has to continue. I mean, Donna, Awatere, Sid Jackson, you and I hope that we are role models for the Pānia Newtons, and I heard your nephew in the to go forward in the same way.
Do you see that they're all joining the dots?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just tino rangatiratanga, it's neoliberalism, it's women's rights. Is that something that's inspiring?
Well, it's connected.
Yeah.
Oppression is connected by patriarchy, by oppression.
You can't just attack one part, you've got to tip the whole thing over.
And so tikanga Māori understands that. The vibrance of our culture understands that. You know, the pageantry of our challenges on the Aotea is a natural forum for activist training. If you don't be the right orator, you get sung down. Activism's the same. If you're not a good speaker out on the front lines, nobody wants to listen to you. If you don't use the megaphone right, give
when
it to
you're
someone
called
else.
up, when you're called up to do it, you've been in the Waitangi Tribunal, you've been in the court cases. I bet half the people that we've seen on this program are your clients. Is that right?
I represent. I mean, Ken was Karakia Ken. He did he was denied by Judge Duncan the right to, I think, speak Māori when he was a probation officer out in Otahu. When he was arrested at Pākaitora, he again tried to do the karakia and was arrested.
Yeah.
I mean, he challenged their racism and their colonial oppression of our language.
What are we fighting for?
You know, and I was there for him.
At the end of the day, what are we fighting for?
It's really simple for me. Peace and justice and the right to be in our country. Really simple things. Te Tiriti o Waitangi promised that, but we live in an unsettled way. The erasure that's occurred of our history, our language, our understandings, I think it's unconscionable. Yeah. I fight for us to awaken, arise and challenge that oppression.
Kia ora.
And I hope we all do that, actually. I hope that's what we inspire.
Ngā mihi kia koe for your work too. Thank you. Kia ora. That's our show for tonight, and you can see a repeat of this program on Sunday at 7 o'clock. And find us online, go to www.maoritelevision.com and click on Moana. Now, this is our last program for the year, and I've loved it. What a boomer. We'll be back in 2020 with a whole new season of Te Ao with Moana. Koina ngā kaupapa kei te kete I tēnei rā ngā manaakitanga te wāhi ngaro. Kia tātou katoa ko Te Ao Māori tēnei. Kātou for now, good night and rattle the cage.